Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with a worn rag as he stepped out of his repair bay into the harsh sunlight of Kepler Station. The frontier outpost buzzed with its usual chaos of traders, miners, and spacers looking for quick fixes to their battered ships. At 32, Marcus had seen enough broken vessels to know that most problems came down to two things: poor maintenance or cheaper parts than advertised. The morning alarm echoed across the station's metal framework, signaling another day of salvage operations in the debris field known as the graveyard. Ancient ships from a dozen different species drifted there, picked clean by generations of scavengers. Most contained nothing but scrap metal and outdated components, but occasionally someone struck lucky with intact tech or rare materials. Marcus checked his work schedule on a cracked tablet. 3 routine repairs and 1 emergency call from a salvage crew that had found something unusual. He grabbed his toolkit and headed for the docking bay, his boots clanging against the metal walkways that connected the station's various modules. The salvage ship Rusty Fortune waited at Dock 7, its hull scarred from years of navigating asteroid fields and debris. Captain Torres, a weathered woman in her 50s, greeted Marcus with a grim expression. "Chun, glad you're here. We've got a situation that's beyond our expertise." She led him toward the cargo bay. Found a derelict about 6 hours out. The thing's massive, easily a kilometer long. Architecture we've never seen before. Marcus followed her through the ship's cramped corridors. Any idea what species built it? That's the problem. It doesn't match anything in the databases. The hull material is some kind of biometallic composite that self-repairs minor damage. But here's the weird part. The ship's still partially operational after what looks like centuries of drift. They entered the cargo bay, where Marcus saw the strangest sight of his career. A section of alien hull about the size of a small room had been carefully extracted, its surfaces covered in flowing, organic patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Strange symbols pulsed with a faint blue glow along what appeared to be control surfaces. "We managed to cut out this section because we detected life signs inside," Torres explained. "But we can't figure out how to open it without potentially killing whatever's in there." The readings show a single entity, unconscious but alive. Marcus approached the whole section, running his hands over its surface. The material felt warm and almost seemed to respond to his touch, the patterns brightening slightly. He'd worked with dozens of different alien technologies during his years as a mechanic, but this was unlike anything he'd encountered. "Have you tried standard universal access codes?" "Everything in the book. The ship's computer systems use some kind of quantum-level encryption we can't crack. But there's something else." Torres showed him a scanner reading. "The life form inside. It's been paralyzed for what looks like decades. Life support is keeping alive, but barely." Marcus studied the readings, noting the slow but steady biorhythms. Whatever was inside had been trapped for a very long time. The ethical implications struck him immediately. They couldn't just leave a sentient being to die slowly, but forcing entry might kill it just as surely. "I'll need specialized equipment to attempt this safely," Marcus said. The biometallic hull means traditional cutting tools could trigger immune responses in the ship's systems. "We need to convince the ship to open willingly." Torres nodded. "That's why we called you. Word is you've got a gift for making alien tech cooperate." Marcus spent the next several hours studying the hull section, making detailed scans and measurements. The symbols seemed to form some kind of interface, but the logic behind their arrangement was completely foreign. As he worked, he began to notice patterns. Certain symbols appeared to be linked to the bio readings from inside, suggesting they might be medical displays. The breakthrough came when Marcus realized the symbols weren't just displaying information. They were responding to the trapped being's vital signs. The alien ship was essentially a living organism, and the whole section was trying to maintain its passenger while seeking help from outside. "It's not locked," Marcus explained to Torres and her crew. "It's quarantined. The ship detected some kind of medical emergency and sealed this section to protect the occupant. We need to prove we're here to help." Using a combination of touch and bioelectrical feedback, Marcus began communicating with the ship's systems. It was slow work, requiring patience and intuition rather than technical knowledge. The patterns on the hull responded to his touch, growing brighter when he seemed to understand their meaning. Hours passed as Marcus worked to establish trust with the alien ship's AI. Gradually, the symbols began to shift and reorganize, forming new patterns that seemed more comprehensible. The hull material started to soften and flow, revealing what appeared to be an access port. "Stand back," Marcus warned as the hull began to iris open. Emergency atmosphere rushed out, filled with the scent of ozone and something floral. Emergency lighting activated inside the chamber, revealing its occupant. The being inside took Marcus's breath away. It resembled a wolf in basic structure, but stood nearly 7 feet tall, even lying down. Its fur was a deep silver blue that seemed to contain starlight, and its limbs were longer and more graceful than any earth animal. Most striking were the crystalline growths along its spine and shoulders, not natural bone or horn, but some kind of biotechnological enhancement. The alien's eyes opened as the chamber's atmosphere equalized with the ship's. They were large and intelligent, a deep violet color that seemed to hold galaxies. When those eyes met Marcus's, he felt a shock of recognition that made no logical sense. The wolf being tried to speak, its mouth moving soundlessly before a translation device somewhere in the chamber activated. "Please, the paralysis, help me." Marcus immediately began scanning the alien with his medical equipment. The readings showed extensive nerve damage throughout its body, but the pattern was artificial rather than natural. Someone or something had deliberately paralyzed this being. "Torres, get your medical bay ready. We need to transport him carefully. Any jarring could make the nerve damage permanent." The wolf alien's eyes tracked Marcus's movements as he worked. "You understand our technology. How is this possible? Your species is not in our records." "I'm just a mechanic who's good with alien tech," Marcus replied, carefully attaching life support monitors. "What's your name?" "Kythera of the Nexus Fleet." Was a guardian of the old knowledge. The alien's voice carried pain and exhaustion. "How long have I been trapped?" Marcus checked the ship's chronometer readings. "Based on the decay patterns in your ship's systems, I'd estimate about 40 years. Kythera's eyes widened in horror. 40 years? Then the war. Did my people survive the silence?" Torres leaned forward. "What war? What silence? We've never encountered your species before. The Devourers came from the void between galaxies. They consumed entire star systems, turning their energy into weapons against the living universe. My ship was fleeing when..." Kythera's expression grew distant. "I remember betrayal. Someone I trusted injected me with a neural toxin. The paralysis began just as we entered this system." Marcus felt a chill as he processed this information. A war between advanced species, one side apparently consuming star systems for fuel. If Kythera's people had lost, what did that mean for younger civilizations like humanity? "We need to get you to proper medical facilities," Marcus said. "But first, can you tell us more about your ship's systems?" "The technology is incredible. Biometallic hulls that self-repair, quantum encryption, neural interfaces. The ship is grown, not built," Kythera explained weakly. "My people learned to partner with living metals centuries ago. But the knowledge, so much has been lost if I am the only survivor." As they carefully transferred Kythera to the Rusty Fortune's medical bay, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would change everything. The alien's technology was centuries ahead of human science, and the implications of a galactic war that had apparently wiped out an entire advanced civilization were staggering. In the medical bay, Marcus worked alongside Torres's medic to stabilize Kythera. The alien's physiology was complex, but not incompatible with their equipment. More importantly, the neural damage appeared to be reversible with the right treatment. "The toxin that paralyzed you," Marcus said as he calibrated a nerve regeneration unit. "Do you know what it was?" "Wraith venom," Kythera replied, his voice growing stronger as the medical equipment boosted his failing systems. "A bioweapon designed by my own people, ironically. It preserves the victim's consciousness while slowly shutting down their nervous system. A cruel torture device. Someone wanted you to suffer," Torres observed. "Commander Zexhai believed I was too attached to the younger species we were supposed to protect. He thought mercy was weakness that would doom us all to the Devourers." Kythera's expression hardened. He may have been right about the war, but he was wrong to abandon our principles. As the medical systems worked to counteract decades of toxin buildup, Marcus found himself studying Kythera's biotechnological augmentations. The crystalline growths weren't decorative. They were some kind of organic computer system that interfaced directly with the alien's nervous system. "Your enhancements," Marcus said, "they're not just tools, are they?" "Living memory crystals," Kythera confirmed. They contain the accumulated knowledge of my order, star charts, technology schematics, tactical information about the Devourers. Everything my people learned in their final years. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. They discovered a repository of advanced knowledge that could change the course of human civilization. But with that knowledge came danger. If the Devourers were still out there, humanity might need every advantage it could get. Rest now, Marcus said as the medical systems completed their initial treatment. We'll have you back at Kepler Station soon. There are people there who need to hear your story. As Kythera drifted into healing sleep, Marcus stared out at the stars through the medical bay's viewport. Somewhere out there, ancient enemies might still lurk in the darkness between galaxies. And humanity, still struggling to establish itself among the younger, spacefaring species, might be walking blindly into a conflict that had already consumed civilizations far older and more advanced than Earth. The wolf alien stirred in his sleep, and Marcus saw the memory crystals pulse with stored light. Knowledge and power beyond human dreams lay within reach, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that some knowledge came with a price too high to pay. As a rusty fortune began its journey back to Kepler Station, Marcus made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. Whatever secrets Kythera carried, whatever dangers his knowledge might unleash, humanity deserved the chance to face them with open eyes. The rescue was complete, but Marcus suspected their real journey was just beginning. Marcus stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station's medical facility, watching through reinforced glass as a team of xenobiologists worked around Kythera's recovery pod. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and the alien's condition had improved dramatically. The neuroregeneration treatments were working, gradually restoring feeling to limbs that had been paralyzed for decades. Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief medical officer, approached with a tablet full of test results. His recovery rate is remarkable. The toxin damage is reversing faster than our models predicted. Those biotechnological enhancements of his seem to be accelerating the healing process. Any idea how they work? Marcus asked, unable to hide his fascination. The crystal structures along his spine are interfacing directly with his nervous system, providing computational support and medical monitoring. It's like having a supercomputer and medical suite built into his skeleton. Dr. Kim shook her head in amazement. The level of biotechnology integration is centuries beyond our current capabilities. Through the glass, Marcus watched Kythera attempt to flex his fingers. The alien's concentration was intense, each small movement of victory against 4 decades of paralysis. When their eyes met through the observation window, Kythera managed a slight nod of acknowledgement. He's been asking for you, Dr. Kim said. Claims he has information that's crucial for humanity's survival. Station Command is getting nervous about the implications. Marcus wasn't surprised. Word of the alien rescue had spread quickly through Kepler Station's tight-knit community, and speculation was running wild. Everything from first contact protocols to potential military applications had been discussed in hushed conversations throughout the station's corridors. I'll go talk to him, Marcus decided. Maybe he's ready to explain what we've stumbled into. The medical bay's atmosphere felt heavy with tension as Marcus entered. Kythera was sitting up in his recovery pod, the first time he'd managed such a feat since the rescue. The alien's silver-blue fur seemed to shimmer with improved health, and his violet eyes held a clarity that had been absent before. Marcus, Kythera said, his voice stronger than before. Your people have given me a gift I thought I would never receive. Hope. But with that hope comes responsibility. There are things you must know before my presence here brings disaster upon your species. Marcus pulled up a chair beside the pod. Start from the beginning. What exactly are these Devourers you mentioned? Kythera's expression grew distant as he accessed memories stored in his biotechnological augmentations. They come from a void between galaxies, entities of pure hunger that consume the energy of stars and planets to fuel their expansion. My people first encountered them 3 centuries ago, when they devoured the Ketheran Empire in the outer spiral arm. The memory crystals along Kythera's spine began to glow, projecting holographic images into the air between them. Marcus saw vast, organic ships that looked more like living creatures than constructed vessels, their forms writhing through space as they literally consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty void in their wake. At first, we thought they were simply another species with aggressive expansion policies, Kythera continued. We were wrong. The Devourers don't colonize or convert. They consume everything down to the quantum level, transforming matter and energy into more of themselves. How did your people fight them? For 2 centuries, we tried every weapon, every strategy known to galactic civilization. Nuclear fire, antimatter weapons, reality-warping technologies. Nothing worked. The Devourers absorbed our attacks and grew stronger. Kythera's voice carried the weight of impossible loss. We watched 17 different species go extinct fighting them. The holographic display shifted to show massive battles in space, fleets of impossibly advanced ships clashing with the Devourer entities. Marcus watched in horrified fascination as entire civilizations made their last stands, only to be consumed utterly. But you survived, at least partially, Marcus pointed out. Ow! We learned to run, Kythera said simply. The survivors of 63 different species formed the Nexus Alliance. Instead of fighting, we focused on evacuation and preservation. My order, the Guardians, were tasked with carrying the knowledge of the lost civilizations to safety. Marcus felt a chill as the implications sank in. And now you're here in human space. Are the Devourers following you? I don't know, Kythera admitted. My ship's records end when I was paralyzed. But the Devourers have a pattern. They consume in waves, then retreat to the void to digest their harvest before returning for more. The time between waves has been growing longer, which suggests they're preparing for a final, massive assault. The holographic display showed star charts with vast dark zones where systems had once existed. Marcus realized he was looking at a map of galactic genocide, entire spiral arms reduced to empty space. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. What do you expect humanity to do? Your species is young, but I've observed something remarkable during my recovery. The way you approach technology, the intuitive understanding you showed with my ship systems. It's unique among all the species I've encountered. Kythera's memory crystals pulsed brighter, displaying complex technological schematics. Most civilizations develop along predictable paths: energy manipulation, matter conversion, dimensional engineering. But humans seem to have an innate ability to understand and integrate disparate technologies. You make connections that older, more specialized species miss. Marcus studied the alien technology displays, seeing patterns and relationships that did seem obvious once pointed out. You think that gives us an advantage? I think it gives us hope, Kythera corrected. Every weapon the galaxy threw at the Devourers was based on advanced applications of single technological principles. But the Devourers have existed since before a universe began cooling from its birth fires. They've encountered every form of conventional technology. The alien struggled to stand, his recovering limbs shaking with effort. Marcus moved to help, but Kythera waved him off. What if the answer isn't more advanced technology, but technology used in ways no one has ever tried? What if human unpredictability and integration abilities are exactly what's needed? Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What exactly are you proposing? I want to share the accumulated knowledge of the Nexus Alliance with humanity. Everything we learned about the Devourers, every technological innovation developed during the war, every failed strategy that might work with a human twist. The door to the medical bay slid open, and Commander Janet Walsh entered with 2 security officers. As Kepler Station's military liaison, Walsh had been monitoring the situation from the beginning. Mr. Chun, we need to discuss the security implications of your discovery, she said curtly. The technologies you've described could revolutionize human civilization, but they could also make us targets. Kythera's ears flattened against his head. A gesture Marcus was learning indicated distress. Commander, with respect, your species is already a target. The Devourers consume everything that generates organized energy patterns. Your civilization's expansion will draw their attention eventually, regardless of what technology you possess. Then, why accelerate the process by arming ourselves with alien weapons? Walsh demanded. Because, Kythera said, struggling to his feet despite his still weak condition, preparation time might be the only advantage we can give you. The Devourers attack without warning, and unprepared civilizations fall within days. Marcus found himself caught between 2 valid perspectives. The potential benefits of alien technology were obvious, but so were the risks of attracting the attention of galactic predators. What kind of timeline are we looking at? He asked Kythera. The alien accessed his memory crystals, and Complex calculations flowed across the holographic display. Based on devourer consumption patterns and the energy signatures of human expansion, I estimate you have between 50 and 100 years before they take notice of your species. Commander Walsh paled. That's not much time to prepare for a war against entities that consumed advanced civilizations. It's more time than most species had, Kythera replied grimly. And you have advantages they didn't. Your technology is still flexible, not locked into rigid paradigms. Your species hasn't developed the arrogance that comes with millennia of galactic dominance. Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. I want to learn everything you can teach me about your technology. Not just the weapons, everything. If we're going to have any chance against these things, we need to understand how they work. Kythera's expression brightened with something approaching hope. The learning process will be dangerous. My people's technology integrates directly with the nervous system. The knowledge transfer could kill you. Then, we'll find a safer way, Marcus said with determination. We'll modify the process, create interfaces that work with human physiology. If we can't do it safely, we'll find humans who can. Commander Walsh stepped forward. This decision is above your pay grade, Chun. I'm calling for a full review by Earth Command. By all means, Marcus agreed. But, while bureaucrats debate, I'm going to start learning. Kythera is getting stronger every day, and his knowledge is the only edge we might have. Over the following days, Marcus spent every available hour with Kythera, learning the basics of Nexus Alliance technology. The aliens' teaching methods were unlike anything in human education. Instead of explaining concepts verbally, he uses biotechnological enhancements to create immersive holographic environments where Marcus could interact directly with alien technologies. The learning process was exhausting, but exhilarating. Marcus found himself grasping concepts that should have taken years to understand, seeing connections between different technological approaches that even surprised Kythera. Your mind processes information in ways I've never encountered, the alien admitted during one session. You're finding solutions to problems that stumped entire research teams for my civilization. But with understanding came horrifying awareness. The Devourers weren't just another hostile alien species. They were a force of cosmic entropy, literally unraveling the organized structures that allowed life to exist. Every victory against them had been temporary, every defense eventually overcome. How do you fight something that exists to unmake existence itself? Marcus asked during a break between lessons. You don't fight it, Kythera replied. You survive it. And, hopefully, you find a way to make it move on to easier prey. Marcus stared at the star charts, showing the Devourer's predicted approach vectors. Somewhere out in the cosmic dark, ancient hunger was stirring, preparing to consume everything humanity had ever built or dreamed of building. But, as he looked at the alien technologies beginning to make sense under his hands, Marcus felt a stubborn human refusal to accept inevitable defeat. If the Devourers expected to encounter another helpless civilization, they were going to be very surprised when they met humanity. 6 months had passed since Kythera's rescue, and Kepler Station had transformed into something unrecognizable. What had once been a simple frontier outpost now buzzed with activity as Earth's greatest scientific minds worked alongside the alien Guardian to unlock the secrets of Nexus Alliance technology. Marcus stood in what had previously been Cargo Bay 7, now converted into a massive research facility. Holographic displays filled the air, showing everything from biometallic hull designs to quantum-dimensional engineering principles. The sight still took his breath away, even after months of daily exposure to technologies that seemed more like magic than science. Marcus, we need your input on the neural interface design, Dr. Elena Vasquez called from across the lab. As Earth's leading expert in cybernetics, she had been assigned to help develop safe methods for humans to interface with Nexus technology. Marcus made his way through the organized chaos of the research facility. Teams of scientists and engineers worked at stations that blended human-computer interfaces with alien biotechnological systems. The integration hadn't been easy. Nexus technology was designed for species with different neurological structures, but human adaptability was proving its worth. At the neural interface station, Kythera sat connected to a modified version of his own biotechnological systems. His recovery had been remarkable. He could now walk without assistance, and had regained full use of his enhanced nervous system. The memory crystals along his spine pulsed with activity as he guided human researchers through the complexities of consciousness technology integration. The latest prototype shows promising results, Dr. Vasquez explained, showing Marcus a neural interface headset that looked like a combination of human technology and alien biomechanics. We've managed to create a buffer system that prevents the neural overload that killed our first volunteers. Marcus winced at the reminder. 3 brave volunteers had died in the early experiments, their nervous systems burning out when exposed to the raw data flow of Nexus technology. Their sacrifice had led to crucial breakthroughs in safe interface design, but the cost had been heavy. How close are we to a working system? Marcus asked, studying the readouts from the latest tests. Close enough that we need someone to test it properly, Kythros said, disconnecting from his interface. The simulations can only take us so far. We need a human mind that can actually process Nexus-level information flows. Dr. Vasquez frowned. The risks are still enormous. Even with all our safeguards, there's a significant chance of permanent neurological damage or death. Marcus had been expecting this conversation for weeks. As the human who had shown the greatest aptitude for understanding alien technology, he was the obvious candidate for the first real test. But the knowledge that he might not survive the experience made the decision sobering. What exactly would the interface allow me to do? He asked. Kythros' expression grew serious. Direct access to the accumulated knowledge of 63 civilizations. Not just technical information, but genuine understanding of how technologies work at the quantum level. You would be able to modify and improve Nexus systems in ways even my people never achieved. The implications were staggering. With that level of technological understanding, humanity could leap forward thousands of years in development almost overnight. But the personal cost might be Marcus's life. There's another factor to consider, Commander Walsh said, entering the lab with a grim expression. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected anomalous energy signatures in the void reaches. Whatever's out there is moving this way. Kythros' memory crystals flared with alarm as he accessed the data Walsh provided. These signatures, they match Devourer Scout entities. They're still at least 10 years out, but this confirms my worst fears. They've detected human expansion and are investigating. The lab fell silent as the weight of this news sank in. 10 years had seemed like a comfortable buffer when Kythros first mentioned the timeline. Now, with actual proof that the cosmic predators were approaching, every day of delay felt like a potentially fatal mistake. How long would the interface procedure take? Marcus asked, his decision already made. The initial connection can be established in hours, Kythros explained. But full integration of the knowledge base could take weeks. During that time, your consciousness would be suspended while your neural pathways reorganize to accommodate the new information. Dr. Vasquez shook her head vigorously. Marcus, you could emerge from the process fundamentally changed. We don't know how human consciousness will react to alien thought patterns and memories spanning multiple species. We don't have a choice, Marcus replied. If the Devourers are already sending scouts, we need every advantage we can get. And if something goes wrong, you'll have learned enough from the attempt to make the next try safer. Over the following week, the research team worked frantically to prepare for the interface procedure. Marcus underwent extensive neurological mapping to help optimize the alien technology for human use. The process was exhausting, requiring him to spend hours connected to scanning equipment that mapped every neural pathway in his brain. Kythros spent the time modifying his own biotechnological enhancements to serve as a bridge between human and alien consciousness. The procedure would essentially allow Marcus to temporarily merge his mind with the Guardian's memory crystals, downloading centuries of accumulated knowledge directly into his brain. I should warn you, Kythros said the night before the procedure. The knowledge you'll gain includes the memories and experiences of thousands of individuals from dozens of different species. Maintaining your own identity through that flood of alien consciousness will require tremendous mental discipline. Marcus nodded, trying to project more confidence than he felt. I've always been good at staying focused under pressure. This will be unlike any pressure you've ever experienced, Kythros warned. Some of the memories you'll access include the final moments of entire civilizations as they were consumed by the Devourers. The psychological trauma alone could destroy your sanity. The day of the procedure arrived with typical Kepler station efficiency. The medical team had prepared every safeguard they could devise, from neural monitoring systems to emergency shutdown procedures. Dr. Vasquez made a final check of the interface equipment while Dr. Kim prepared life support systems to maintain Marcus's body during the consciousness transfer. Marcus lay back on the interface table, watching as Kythera connected himself to the modified biotechnological array. The alien's memory crystals began to glow with stored light as he prepared to share the accumulated knowledge of galactic civilization. "Remember," Dr. Vasquez said as she placed the neural interface headset over Marcus's head, "if you feel your sense of self beginning to dissolve, trigger the emergency disconnect. Better to survive with partial knowledge than die with complete understanding." Marcus felt the interface activate, a tingling sensation that quickly became a rushing flood of information. His last clear human thought was a prayer that he would still be himself when he awakened. The knowledge hit him like a tidal wave. Suddenly, his mind contained the memories of Kythera's entire order, stretching back centuries. He experienced the first contact with the Devourers through the terrified consciousness of a Kethran admiral, felt the desperation of the great evacuation fleets as entire star systems died behind them. But with the horror came wonder. Marcus found himself understanding technologies that had seemed impossible just moments before. Biometallic engineering that could grow spaceships like living organisms, quantum-dimensional folding that allowed faster-than-light communication across galactic distances, consciousness transfer technology that could preserve the minds of dying civilizations. The alien memories were overwhelming, thousands of different perspectives and experiences flooding through his human consciousness. He experienced life as a crystalline entity that thought in harmonic frequencies, as a gas giant swimmer whose thoughts moved like ocean currents, as a machine intelligence that had transcended physical form entirely. Through it all, Marcus fought to maintain his own identity, using the stubborn human refusal to be overwhelmed as an anchor point in the storm of alien consciousness. Gradually, he learned to navigate the vast repository of knowledge, accessing specific information without being lost in the memories that contained it. When he finally began to surface from the deep interface, Marcus realized that days had passed. Dr. Kim was monitoring his vital signs while Dr. Vasquez anxiously watched neural activity displays. Kythera remained connected to the system, his consciousness serving as a guide through the knowledge transfer. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kim asked as Marcus slowly opened his eyes. Marcus took inventory of his thoughts and memories, amazed to discover that his human personality remained intact despite the flood of alien knowledge. But now that knowledge was truly his, integrated into his understanding in ways that felt natural rather than foreign. "Different," Marcus admitted, "but still me. And I think I understand why the Devourers have been so successful." He sat up carefully, his body weak from the extended interface procedure. Around him, the research lab looked different. He could now see the crude limitations of human technology, but also the incredible potential for improvement. Every civilization that fought the Devourers made the same mistake, Marcus continued. They tried to match the Devourers' strength with superior technology. But that's not how you fight something that feeds on organized energy. You fight it with chaos. Kythera disconnected from the interface array, his expression hopeful but cautious. "Explain." Marcus stood on unsteady legs, his mind racing with possibilities that combined human innovation with alien knowledge. The Devourers expect organized resistance, fleets, weapons, coordinated defenses. They've evolved to consume and counter every form of systematic opposition. But humans don't fight systematically. We improvise, we adapt, we do things that make no logical sense. The research teams gathered around as Marcus began sketching designs on the lab's holographic displays. His hands moved with new confidence, drawing technologies that perfectly blended human creativity with alien science. "We're not going to build better ships or stronger weapons," Marcus announced. "We're going to build chaos engines, technologies designed to be unpredictable, unorganized, impossible to counter because they don't follow any logical pattern." For the first time since his rescue, Kythera's expression showed genuine hope. "You're talking about turning human unpredictability into a weapon." "I'm talking about turning it into the ultimate defense," Marcus corrected. "Let me show you what a human mind can do with access to galactic civilization's greatest discoveries." As he began to explain his vision for humanity's defense against cosmic predators, Marcus realized that the rescue of a paralyzed alien had indeed changed everything, but not in ways anyone could have predicted. 2 years after the neural interface procedure, Earth's entire approach to space technology had transformed beyond recognition. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Terra station, watching as the latest batch of Chaos ships completed their test flights in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. The vessels defied every principle of traditional spacecraft design. Where conventional ships followed predictable forms designed for maximum efficiency, these crafts seemed to shift and change their configurations constantly. Their hulls were grown rather than built, using biometallic technologies that Kythera's people had developed but that human minds had pushed into entirely new directions. System diagnostic complete on Chaos Squadron 7, reported Lieutenant Sarah Chun, Marcus's younger sister who had joined the project after completing accelerated training in biotechnological engineering. All ships showing optimal unpredictability coefficients. Marcus smiled at the terminology they developed. Unpredictability coefficient was a measurement of how impossible it was to predict a ship's next action based on its previous behavior. Human pilots, it turned out, were naturally excellent at maintaining high unpredictability, especially when equipped with technologies that responded to subconscious impulses rather than conscious commands. How are the new pilots adapting to the neural interfaces? Marcus asked, reviewing the test data on his display tablet. Better than expected, Sarah replied. The modified interfaces you designed are much safer than the original prototype. We're seeing integration success rates of over 90%, with minimal psychological side effects. The neural interface technology had been Marcus's first major innovation after gaining access to Nexus Alliance knowledge. Unlike the dangerous direct consciousness transfer he had undergone, these new interfaces allowed human pilots to access alien technologies while maintaining complete psychological independence. Dr. Kythera approached from across the observation deck, his movement now completely fluid after years of recovery and enhancement. The alien guardian had become an integral part of the human defense effort, his knowledge and experience invaluable in preparing for the approaching threat. The deep space monitoring networks have detected increased devourer activity in the outer systems, Kythera reported. They're definitely investigating the energy signatures from our expansion colonies. I estimate we have perhaps 5 years before they arrive in force. Marcus nodded grimly. The timeline had been steadily shortening as human space presence grew. Each new colony, each increase in interstellar communication traffic made humanity's civilization more visible to cosmic predators who hunted by detecting organized energy patterns. Are the colonial defenses ready? Marcus asked. As ready as we can make them, Kythera confirmed. But I'm still concerned about our strategy. Chaos tactics work well for individual engagements, but coordinating a system-wide defense while maintaining unpredictability remains a significant challenge. This had been the central problem facing the Defense Planning Committee. The Devourers had evolved to counter organized resistance, but some level of coordination was necessary to mount an effective defense. The solution Marcus had developed was typically human in its apparent contradiction. Show him the new command protocols, Marcus said to Sarah. His sister activated a holographic display that showed the command structure for humanity's defense fleet. Instead of traditional hierarchical organization, the system resembled a complex web of interconnected nodes, each capable of independent action while remaining loosely connected to the whole. We call it Distributed Chaos Command, Sarah explained. Each ship captain has complete tactical autonomy, but they're linked through quantum communication networks that share information without giving orders. Kythera studied the display with growing amazement. You've created a command structure that operates like a living organism rather than a military organization. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. Individual ships respond to local conditions and opportunities, but the fleet as a whole maintains an overall strategic direction through emergent behavior rather than central planning. The concept had been inspired by Marcus's access to memories from species that thought in collective consciousness patterns. But instead of direct mental linking, humans use technology to achieve something similar while maintaining individual creativity and initiative. Field Marshal Rodriguez wants to see the latest fleet exercise results, Lieutenant Commander Walsh announced as she entered the observation deck. Janet Walsh had been promoted significantly since Kythera's rescue, now serving as liaison between the civilian research projects and Earth's military command. Marcus called up the exercise data, showing the results of last week's simulation against virtual devourer entities. The human fleet had performed remarkably well, using tactics that were impossible to predict or counter because they emerged spontaneously from the collective creativity of hundreds of individual ship captains. The Devourers in the simulation were overwhelmed by the constant tactical innovation, Marcus explained. Every time they adapted to one set of behaviors, the fleet had already shifted to completely different approaches. But simulations aren't reality, Walsh pointed out. We're making a lot of assumptions about Devourer capabilities based on historical records that might be incomplete. Kythera's expression darkened. I fear our assumptions may be overly optimistic. The entities approaching our space are larger than any previously recorded. Whatever they learned from consuming 63 civilizations, they've used it to grow beyond their historical capabilities. This was the constant shadow hanging over all their preparations. Despite having access to the accumulated knowledge of galactic civilization, they were still making educated guesses about an enemy that had evolved and grown over centuries of cosmic predation. Then, we'll have to be more unpredictable than we've ever been, Marcus decided. Sarah, how's the development of the experimental technologies going? The reality distortion generators are showing promising results, Sarah reported. We can now create localized zones where the fundamental forces of physics operate according to different parameters. Any Devourer entity entering such a zone would find their normal feeding mechanisms completely ineffective. The reality distortion technology represented the most radical application of Nexus Alliance science to human defense needs. By manipulating the underlying quantum structure of space-time in small areas, they could create regions where energy behaved in completely unexpected ways. The biomechanical ecology ships are even more promising, Sarah continued. We've successfully created self-sustaining technological ecosystems that can evolve and adapt in real time. Each ship becomes a unique environment with its own technological evolution. Marcus felt a familiar thrill at the mention of the ecology ships. These vessels represented his most ambitious fusion of human creativity with alien science. Instead of building ships, they grew technological ecosystems that could adapt and evolve to meet changing conditions. Each ship was literally alive, capable of developing new capabilities through technological evolution. And the quantum uncertainty weapons? Kythera asked. Still experimental, but functional, Sarah replied. We can now create weapons that exist in quantum superposition until the moment they hit their target. Even a user doesn't know what kind of weapon will manifest until impact. This technology had been inspired by human quantum mechanics research, combined with Nexus Alliance probability manipulation. The weapons literally didn't exist in any determinate form until they were used, making them impossible to defend against because there was nothing specific to defend against. As they reviewed the latest developments in defensive technology, Marcus couldn't help but feel amazed at how far humanity had come in just 3 years. The rescue of a single alien survivor had triggered a technological revolution that had advanced human civilization by thousands of years. But with advancement came responsibility. The technologies they were developing could transform humanity into a galactic superpower or destroy them if used incorrectly. The ethical implications of wielding such power were sobering. Dr. Chun, a technician, called from across the observation deck. We're receiving an encrypted transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Proxima Centauri. Priority Alpha classification. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Priority Alpha meant contact with unknown entities, potentially the first direct evidence of approaching Devourer scouts. The transmission appeared on the main display, showing long-range sensor readings from humanity's most distant monitoring post. The energy signatures were massive, clearly artificial, and moving through interstellar space at velocities that should have been impossible. Preliminary analysis suggests these are Devourer scout entities, the technician reported. But the energy output levels are significantly higher than historical records indicate. Kythera studied the readings with growing alarm. These aren't ordinary scouts. The power levels suggest they're harvester units, entities capable of consuming entire star systems to fuel further expansion. The observation deck fell silent as the implications sank in. The approaching Devourers weren't just investigating humanity's expansion. They were preparing to begin harvesting operations in human space. How long until they reach our outer colonies? Walsh asked. The technician ran quick calculations. At current velocity, approximately 18 months until they reached the Tau Ceti system. Marcus felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders. 18 months to finalize preparations for a war against entities that had consumed galactic civilization. The technologies they developed were impressive, but were they enough to face an enemy that had grown beyond all historical precedent? We need to accelerate all development programs, Marcus decided. No more testing phases, no more safety protocols. We implement everything we've got, and hope human unpredictability is enough to surprise entities that have seen everything the galaxy could throw at them. As alarms began sounding throughout Terra Station, calling all personnel to emergency stations, Marcus realized that the real test of humanity's worthiness to survive among the stars was about to begin. The approaching darkness between the stars carried with it the accumulated hunger of cosmic predators who had never encountered anything quite like humanity's chaotic creativity. In 18 months, they would discover whether human unpredictability was evolutionary adaptation or merely postponed extinction. The Battle of Tau Ceti began not with the thunder of conventional weapons, but with silence so profound it seemed to devour sound itself. Marcus stood on the command deck of the flagship Entropy's Edge, watching through the reality distortion viewports as the first devourer entities emerged from the void between stars. They were nothing like the historical records had suggested. Where ancient descriptions spoke of organic ships the size of cities, these entities stretched across astronomical distances, their forms visible as dark absences against the star field rather than solid objects. They didn't move through space so much as consume it, leaving corridors of absolute nothingness in their wake. Energy displacement readings are off the scale, reported Captain Martinez, the human commander who had volunteered to test the most experimental neural interface technologies. These things are literally eating space-time itself to fuel their expansion. Kytheros stood beside Marcus at the tactical display, his memory crystals pulsing with the stored experiences of civilizations that had faced similar moments. This is what happened to the Kethran Empire. The Devourers have evolved beyond their historical capabilities. They're no longer just consuming matter and energy, they're consuming the fundamental structure of reality. The human defense fleet hung in formation around Tau Ceti's outer planets, but calling it a formation was misleading. To outside observation, the ships appear to be scattered randomly through the system, their movements chaotic and purposeless. Only the quantum communication networks linking each vessel revealed the underlying coordination. All ships report ready for Chaos Protocol activation, Sarah Chan announced from her position at the Fleet Coordination Station. Unpredictability coefficients are optimal across all squadrons. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of 3 years of preparation condensing into this single moment. Begin distributed command protocol. All captains are authorized for independent tactical innovation. Across the system, nearly 300 ships began moving according to no predetermined plan. Each captain responded to local conditions and personal inspiration, creating a defensive pattern that was impossible to predict because it emerged spontaneously from the collective creativity of humanity's best military minds. The lead devourer entity responded to humanity's presence by expanding its consumption field. Space itself began dissolving in a sphere around the cosmic predator, stars winking out of existence as their light was consumed before it could travel. Reality distortion generators are active, announced Lieutenant Park from the exotic weapons station, creating localized physics anomalies throughout the engagement zone. Suddenly, regions of space throughout the Tau Ceti system began operating according to different physical laws. In some areas, the speed of light changed from moment to moment. In others, gravity reversed or became nonlinear. Energy weapons found themselves firing backward through time, and matter occasionally achieved consciousness just long enough to object to being rearranged. The devourer entities paused their advance, clearly encountering something they had never faced before. Their consumption fields began fluctuating erratically as they tried to process regions where reality itself refused to behave consistently. The quantum uncertainty weapons are having an effect, reported Captain Martinez. The entities can adapt to weapons that don't exist in determinate form until impact. Human ships began firing weapons that existed in quantum superposition, each shot manifesting as something completely different when it struck. Antimatter charges became temporal displacement fields, plasma bolts transformed into probability cascades, and Energy beams occasionally turned into abstract mathematical concepts that attacked the Devourer's logic centers. But the cosmic predators began to adapt. Their consumption fields started generating counterprobability waves, attempting to collapse the quantum uncertainty weapons into determinate states before impact. The dark entities began learning to predict human unpredictability by analyzing the random patterns for underlying mathematical structures. They're starting to counter our chaos tactics, Kythera observed with growing alarm. This is exactly what happened to every previous civilization. The Devourers learn and adapt faster than organic minds can innovate. Marcus watched the tactical displays as human losses began mounting. Ships that ventured too close to the expanding consumption fields simply ceased to exist, their matter and energy absorbed to fuel the Devourers' continued growth. Even the reality distortion generators were being overwhelmed as the entities learned to consume the fundamental forces that created the anomalies. Time for the final protocol, Marcus decided. Sarah, activate the biomechanical ecology ships. Throughout the system, a dozen vessels that had been holding back from the main engagement suddenly came alive in ways that defied all previous understanding of technology. These ships had been grown rather than built, their systems designed to evolve and adapt in real time through technological natural selection. The ecology ships began reproducing, creating smaller vessels that carried random combinations of their parent ship's capabilities. Within minutes, hundreds of new craft filled the space around Tau Ceti, each one unique and unpredictable because they were literally evolving new capabilities as they moved. The Devourer entities found themselves facing an enemy that was changing faster than they could adapt. Every time they developed a counter to one type of attack, the ecology ships had already evolved 3 new approaches. The cosmic predators' consumption fields began fluctuating wildly as they tried to process targets that were transforming faster than their senses could track. "It's working," Captain Martinez reported. "The Devourers can't maintain stable consumption fields against targets that are evolving in real time." But Marcus knew this was only a temporary advantage. The ecology ships were burning through evolutionary possibilities at an unsustainable rate. Eventually, they would exhaust their capacity for innovation, and the Devourers would overcome them through sheer persistence. "Kythera, I need you to do something that goes against everything your people believed," Marcus said urgently. "I need you to help me create a connection between human consciousness and the Devourer entities." The alien guardian stared at Marcus in horror. "That's suicide. Direct mental contact with a Devourer entity would consume your consciousness along with everything else." "Not if we do it right," Marcus insisted. "The Devourers expect organized resistance. They've evolved to consume and counter every form of systematic opposition. But what if we give them something they can't consume?" Marcus activated the experimental consciousness transfer technology that had been developed from his neural interface experiences. But instead of connecting to alien memories, he prepared to link directly with the approaching Devourer entities. "Marcus, this is insane," Sarah protested. "We don't know what direct contact with those things will do to human consciousness." "I do," Marcus replied, initiating the connection. "Because that's exactly what makes us different from every other species they've encountered. We do things that make no sense, even to ourselves." The connection established, and Marcus found his consciousness touching something vast and alien and hungry beyond description. The Devourer entity's mind was like an endless void that existed only to consume, a cosmic hunger that had been feeding since before the universe cooled from its birth fires. But instead of being consumed, Marcus began sharing something the entity had never encountered: pure human creativity. Not organized knowledge or technological innovation, but the chaotic, irrational, beautiful mess of human consciousness itself. The Devourer entity recoiled in confusion. It was designed to consume organized energy patterns, but human creativity wasn't organized. It was spontaneous, contradictory, impossible to predict or categorize. The entity tried to consume Marcus's consciousness, but found itself instead being contaminated by something it couldn't process. Through the quantum communication networks, Marcus's inspiration spread to every human in the fleet. Suddenly, ship captains were making decisions based on dreams and poetry rather than tactical analysis. Weapons were being fired in patterns inspired by music and art rather than military doctrine. The chaos became contagious. Throughout the Tau Ceti system, human actions began defying not just military logic, but basic rationality. Ships performed maneuvers inspired by childhood memories, weapons fired in rhythms based on favorite songs, and defensive formations arranged themselves according to the mathematical beauty of flowers and snowflakes. The Devourer entities found themselves completely unable to adapt to an enemy that didn't operate according to any logic they could comprehend. Their consumption fields began turning inward, consuming themselves as they tried to process patterns that made no sense even to their creators. The Devourer entities are withdrawing, Captain Martinez reported in amazement. They're actually retreating from human space. But Marcus, still linked to the Devourer consciousness, understood the real truth. The entities weren't retreating out of defeat. They were withdrawing because they had encountered something that challenged their fundamental nature. For cosmic predators that had spent eons consuming organized civilizations, humanity represented something completely new, a species that could be civilized and chaotic simultaneously. They'll be back, Marcus said as he disconnected from the alien consciousness. But not for a very long time. We've given them something they need to think about. The possibility that consumption isn't the only way to grow. As the Devourer entities disappeared back into the void between stars, leaving behind only empty space where entire regions of reality had been consumed, and then, somehow restored, Marcus realized that humanity had won something more important than a single battle. They had proven that chaos could be a form of order, that unpredictability could be a kind of wisdom, and that sometimes the best way to fight cosmic predators was to show them something so beautifully irrational that it challenged their entire understanding of existence. Kythera approached Marcus as the human fleet began establishing orbital positions around the restored planets of the Tau Ceti system. Your species has done something I thought was impossible. You've made the Devourers question their own nature. Is that good or bad? Marcus asked, still exhausted from the consciousness transfer. I don't know, Kythera admitted. But it means the universe just became a much more interesting place. As Marcus looked out at the stars restored to their proper places in space-time, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought humanity to this moment. A simple rescue of a paralyzed alien had led to the most important victory in galactic history. Not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through the essentially human refusal to make sense when making sense would lead to defeat. The cosmos had learned something new about the possibilities of consciousness, and Marcus suspected that both humanity and the universe itself would never be quite the same again.